Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, there's snow on the ground and it's pretty cold in the capital, and Canadians from coast to coast are putting up Christmas trees. But the finance minister is stuck in fantasy land, somehow still thinks it's fall. She's weeks behind on delivering the fall economic statement to this House and to Canadians. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says that this minister blew past her deficit reduction targets, adding more inflationary spending and crippling debt that Canadians will have to pay. But we don't know for sure because she's nowhere to be found. So when will the finance minister tell Canadians just how much money she spent?
The honourable minister.
Madam Speaker, we look forward to answering our colleagues' questions, but I do feel it's important to recognize the gravity of this day. It is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, and 35 years ago, 14 women's lives were cut short in a brutal act of violence at l'École Polytechnique, killed simply because they were women. Gender-based violence must not be tolerated in this country, and we all have a role to play in ending it.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, Conservatives on this side of the House stand in solidarity with all of the victims' families on this tragic day. My question, however, was about the finance minister and the fact that she is hiding today. She's hiding. She hasn't hidden the fact that she's doubled Canada's debt. She gave us the highest inflation in 40 years, and she delivered the lowest projected growth of any advanced economy. Right. She's trying to hide the truth for Canadians. So I will ask once again, if she doesn't want to come clean, can anybody on that side of the House tell us exactly how much Canada's deficit is this year?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, we'll put our record up against the Conservatives any day of the week and twice on Sundays. Let me quote from a former governor of the Bank of Canada, David Dodge. He said, because it was obsessively focused on reducing the federal deficit over fiscal years 2011 and 12 through 2015, the Harper government unnecessarily contributed to a slower, rather more muted recovery. So while Conservatives slowed down our recovery, we have accelerated our post-pandemic recovery and are now on track to have the highest growth rate in the G7. That's in addition to Canadian work.
Honourable member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, if that minister wants to put his money where his mouth is, he should call a carbon tax election and let Canadians decide. The finance minister, however, is going to have to find another job after the next election, and maybe she'll find out that you can't turn in your work that's been overdue. It's something that we learn in grade school, and she must have skipped that day. Her government lost control of our borders. They've lost control of immigration. They've clearly lost control of the deficit, too, and they're trying to cover up their tracks. Yeah. So I will ask again, for those in the back, and I will say it slower, what is Canada's deficit this year?
Yeah. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Let's just review, Madam Speaker, the Conservative track record on affordability. So they will not support feeding hungry kids healthy meals at school. 400,000 more kids, they say, no, we don't want to feed you. They will not support a GST break over the holidays on food, toys, and other essentials over the holidays. They say, no, we won't support a GST cut for Canadians. They also won't lift a finger to fight climate change, which is cited in the report as being the greatest driver of food price inflation. When will they get on side with Canadians and actually support?
The honourable member for Lévis-Lobinière. Madam Speaker, the Liberals have not even tabled an economic statement this fall. The Parliamentary Budget Officer was very clear. Our 2023-24 financial audits have not even been tabled. It's a historic lack of transparency in the history of our country. Canadians deserve to know how high the deficit is for this fiscal year ending on March 31st, 2024.
Merci, Madame Présidente. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. As he very well knows, our government has been investing to increase the number of jobs throughout the country. And today, there's some good news. There are 51,000 new jobs for Canadians.
It's going to help grow the economy, that's going to help transition into a modern economy, that's going to build the homes Canadians need, and importantly, provide the support to the families who are dealing with a higher cost of living. It's a shame that the Conservatives, every step of the way, oppose these measures.
L'honorable député de Lévis-Lapinière.
The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, twice this government voted to keep this bad government in place. And yet, this government doesn't even seem to be able to cap its inflationary deficit at $40 billion, which is leading to an increase of $800 in grocery costs for the average family in 2025. Which means that now children are having to ask Santa for basic necessities of life. Canadians want to know, how high will this inflationary deficit be? The Honourable Minister. Honestly, it's very difficult to accept this question when this very week the member had an opportunity to vote to reduce taxes on food, but he voted against that. He will have in the near future another opportunity to vote on programs for school lunch programs throughout the country. I wonder if he's going to vote against that once again. Madam Speaker, in this House, we need to support families and communities. But at every possible opportunity, the Conservative Party votes against that.
The honourable member of Niagara Falls.
Speaker, after 9 years of this failed NDP Liberal government, more and more Canadians are going hungry. They see the Liberal 2-month tax trick for what it is, nothing more than a lump of coal in their Christmas stockings. Exactly. 1 million people are visiting a food bank each month in Ontario, and in Niagara Falls, 120 families per day on average are visiting Project Share, our local food bank, because they cannot afford groceries. When will this NDP Liberal government axe the carbon tax to provide the permanent broad-based tax relief Canadians need and deserve?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I've got some good news to share with that member, because just a few weeks ago, we signed an agreement with the province of Ontario for our national school food program. This means an additional 160,000 kids this school year will have access to healthy food at school. This is help for parents in a stressful and affordable or expensive time. And it ensures that kids can focus on being kids and can focus on learning. When will the Conservatives get on side and support these measures for families?
Hear, hear. Member from Niagara Falls.
Speaker, a 2-month Liberal tax trick does not provide the broad-based permanent tax relief Canadians need. And sadly, they plan to raise the carbon tax again next year. 1 in 7 residents in my community of Niagara Falls have visited Project Share. Almost 5,000 residents visited for the first time last year alone. Wow. Canadians need our help. They need permanent broad-based tax relief. Hear, hear. When will this government finally call a carbon tax election so we can scrap the tax?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
I'd like to remind that member that the last time that they were in government, that the poverty rate for children was 16%, Madam Speaker. We have lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty, and the single most effective measure in doing that is the Canada Child Benefit, ensuring parents have support each and every month to be able to afford the essentials for their family. And guess who voted against it? Guess who vows to dissolve it, Madam Speaker? The Conservatives.
Member for Calgary Centre.
Well, Madam Speaker, the first thing a government has to get right is the basics. For Canadians, that's food and shelter. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, these costs are way up. Housing costs have doubled. Even more basic food costs continue to escalate, and food bank usage is up 90%. Let them eat cake is not an effective strategy. Escalating deficits are the root cause of inflation, and this government still does not get that. Reality is landing on the plates of Canadians. When will this government take a lesson and stop its economic mayhem?
The Minister.
My colleague points to food and shelter as pressure points for Canadian households. I actually agree, but let's actually look at what the different parties are proposing to do about it. First, on food, he's complaining about the high price when he literally is voting against a tax break on food. He's literally opposing a national school food program which is helping hungry kids eat. Madam Speaker, when it comes to shelter, his own city is benefiting from hundreds of millions of dollars in investments directly to build homes more quickly, and he is supporting a leader who vows to cut that program. I won't take lessons from the Conservative Party, who cuts the very programs that put food on the table for families.
Member for Calgary Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This member keeps trying to talk about putting Band-Aids on the wounds his economic policies are causing. But step one is to reverse inflationary policies. Cancel the carbon tax that it hikes the price of food, fuel, and rent. Food inflation has skyrocketed by over 36% over the past 8 years. Higher deficits lead to higher inflation and a weaker Canadian dollar, leading to more inflation. This spending isn't free. Just ask the 2 million Canadians lining up at food banks. Time is up. When will this Prime Minister call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister.
It is hard to understand how a member whose city is receiving $228 million for housing considers that to be a Band-Aid solution. Does he think it is a Band-Aid solution that we are helping his city lead the country when it comes to converting office spaces to homes for Canadians? Does he think it is a Band-Aid solution that we are advancing a permanent program that's going to feed hungry kids in school? I have great respect for that honourable member. I love the city that he calls home, as it once provided a home to me. But it is difficult, once again, to accept questions on the cost of food and shelter from a member in a party who opposes the policies that make it easier to put food on the table for families and keep a roof over their head.
The Honourable Member from Montmagny-Lisle-Kamouraska-Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, after 9 years of this Liberal government, the cost of living is unbearable. Canadians are living through an unprecedented crisis. And yet, what is the Bloc Québécois doing? It's betrayed Quebecers. It has voted for $500 million in spending. And this year, more than 33,000 Quebec children are asking for heartbreaking gifts at Christmas, like a winter coat, a lunchbox, or even a home for their family. In a country like Canada, this is shameful. Can the Liberal Bloc give Quebecers a break and stop supporting this Liberal Prime Minister who is constantly making people poorer? The Honourable Minister.
Member for the question. When I am out and about in my community talking to parents, I recently had a conversation with Olivier, who just had their fourth child, and he shared with me the impact of the Canada Child Benefit for his family. He shared with me the impact of affordable childcare, enabling both of them to go back to work. These are meaningful measures that we have taken to address affordability for Canadians, in which we continue to see the Conservatives oppose.
L'honorable député de Montmagny.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lisle-Kamouraska-Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, this Prime Minister's inflationary spending, supported by the Bloc Québécois, is crushing Canadians. Today, when Quebec children write to Santa, they are asking for heartbreaking items. Hundreds are asking for mittens and winter coats. It's horrifying. This should not be happening in a country like Canada. When will this Liberal Bloc stop harming Quebec families like this and stealing our children's dreams? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are hearing that we need to help families with affordability. That's why we've stepped in to help our children with school lunches and school meals. We've brought in a GST break. The Conservatives could vote with us on that. They could be telling their constituents who are suffering over the holidays that they will be supporting them. But on the contrary, they did the exact opposite. They voted against all these measures for our kids.